For the upstairs part of our renovation, our bedroom and one other room, we did pine flooring. I love the look of pine floors, but chose not to use it downstairs because our old kitchen had pine floor and it just became too beaten up over time. Pine is a softer wood, and with the traffic our kitchen and dining room get, it just doesn't really work well. But the upstairs of our house has pine floors. Although they are painted, they were painted when Mike bought the house. So this wood does match the flooring up here, it's just not finished the same. I wish we had the time, money, and motivation to redo all the floors up here because I love how this stained pine floor turned out. We had a hard time finding a place that sold the size boards we needed. We ended up buying ours from a lumber company out of state. We chose to do boards with 2 different widths since that's what the flooring is on the rest of this level, and I like the look of it. Our boards are 1x8 and 1x10. We started out by sanding down the pine boards. I wanted the floors to have an aged look to give them a bit of character, like maybe they had been in the house for a while, just to fit in better with our 200-year-old farmhouse. So we distressed the wood using some different tools, just to ding it up and mark the wood some. After that, Mike cleaned off the wood before applying the stain. Next, we used a special dill pickle stain. Just kidding. It's actually a mix of 3 parts early American and 1 part natural. We just used a pickle jar to mix it up in. We applied that with a lint-free rag. If you distressed your boards like we did, make sure to work the stain into those spots. Also, make sure to get along the edges as well. As the wood dries out more, it could have slight gaps, so you just want to be sure it looks good even in the gaps. Next was installing the floorboards. We used foam underlayment. Staple it in a few places as you're laying it out to hold it in place. Fit boards up against the wall, making sure to leave a 3/8 gap along all the walls. And most likely you're going to need to cut boards to fit in doorways or around walls. The first board Mike nailed with a nail gun through the tongue because you can't use a flooring nailer this close to the wall. Continue fitting boards together, fitting the groove into the tongue. Tap the boards tightly into place with a mallet. And now you can use the flooring nailer to nail the boards in place. Sometimes the boards might not be perfectly straight. This makes it a little annoying while installing them. If you work your way down the board, nailing it and pushing it into place, you can usually get it to straighten out. And sometimes that might also look like making your wife stand on the boards to hold them in place. If the boards aren't long enough to span the room, you're going to have boards that butt up to each other. Measure and cut the board to size. Sand the edges of the board where you just cut to give them a very slight rounded look. This will help them look better when the joints come together. You'll also want to stain the ends before fitting them into place. We forgot to on this one board here. If the boards gap at all after being installed, this will keep a consistent look. And then Mike just continued this process throughout the room. And we ran out of the foam underlayment and could only find it in red for the rest of the room. When you get to the last board, you'll need to cut the board to size, leaving a 3/8 gap along the wall again. Use a nail gun to face nail the last board into place. The next part is completely optional. We did it just for looks. Old pine floors used to be put in with face nails. Our old floor in the kitchen had these. Since I wanted the floors to look like they fit in with our 200-year-old farmhouse, we put these in. Again, it's just for looks, so you can skip this part if you want. We used square cut flooring nails. Mike made a template to mark where the nails would go. He did them nailing onto the floor joists every 32 inches, and then at every butt joint, he did them on either side. He alternated what joist to go into on every other board. He did 2 nails in the narrow boards and 3 nails in the wide boards. Pre-drill all of the nail holes to help the board not split. Nail in the nails with the long part of the nail in line with the grain of the wood. Mike isn't being too careful hammering in the nails because our boards are distressed, so any extra marks don't bother us. Typically, you would leave the nail a little high of the surface and use a nail set to set it flush. Mike did go back through and make sure they were all flush with a nail set. I didn't get that on film though. For the finish, we used Bona Mega waterborne wood floor finish in extra matte. Before applying, sweep and vacuum the floor to remove all dust and debris. We poured this on the floorboards and used a lamb wool applicator to spread the finish. Make sure to do this in a way where you don't get trapped in the room. Mike did 3 coats total on our floor. Once a coat was dry, he lightly sanded the floors. He used a foam sanding pad 400 grit. Just make sure to clean up the dust from sanding before applying the next coat. And that's what we did for our floors. I love how they turned out and think they're a great fit with our house.